Good day and welcome to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC students. In today's lesson, we'll be discussing persuasive writing, looking at transitional phrases and link words. I'm Vanessa Francis. So, we had started looking at transitional phrases and link words before. So, you should be somewhat familiar with what is going to happen today. But let's start from scratch again. So, your lesson objectives are to review concepts from the previous lesson, differentiate among the various types of transitional phrases and link words, discuss examples of transitional phrases and link words used in sentences, and suggest the type of transitional phrases and link words used in sentences. So, of course, we will begin with a review. So, do you remember what are transitional phrases based on what we had done before? First thing, these are words or phrases that connect one thought or idea to the next. They can be used to connect thoughts in two sentences or to move the reader on to the next paragraph in a logical way. And they can be single words, phrases, or complete sentences. So keep that in mind as we go through. Now, what are some types of transitional phrases, and link words that you did in the previous lesson? So, of course, they support evidence. They draw conclusions. You saw phrases and link words that presented an opposing or contrasting view. Then they also show similarities. They emphasize. And they add a point. And of course, they show examples. So those are the ones you saw in our last lesson. So keep those in mind because there will be a session later on where this will come in handy. So now let's move on to what we're going to look at today. So here is our focus question. Look at it carefully. Some subjects should be dropped from the curriculum. These subjects contribute nothing to life. And the idea is you were to write an essay giving your views on this statement. And this was actually question 7 on the CSEC English A January 2018 paper. So keep that in mind. So the first set of transitional phrases and link words we're looking at are the phrases that indicate general paragraph opening. So think about it. When you want to start a paragraph, sometimes that is the hardest part. You know what you want to say in the paragraph, but how do you start it? So on your screen now, you're seeing some ideas of what you normally would use. So you could normally start by saying, I strongly believe, or I disagree, or I think that, or any other of those typical phrases. Now keep in mind, you don't have to use those. In fact, you're being advised to not use those. So here are some that you can use instead. Think about using admittedly. Think about using assuredly, certainly, granted, no doubt, nobody denies, and you could add that, obviously, and of course. So, here are some more phrases you can use to open a paragraph in a general way. To be sure, true, undoubtedly, questionably, generally speaking, in general, at this level, in this situation. Now think of those carefully. Now look at this sentence using one of those examples we saw earlier. Nobody denies the benefits of the proverbial well-rounded education. However, there are certain subjects that really do nothing but consume precious time while adding nothing to the enrichment of students. Now look at that sentence carefully. So we have used the term nobody denies. That's the one we have highlighted. Now look carefully. How did you use this to just open the paragraph in general? So you didn't have to start with the usual I strongly agree, I strongly disagree, I think. You can use something else. So let's look at some other ways that you can also open a general paragraph. So our next example, to be sure, the benefits to be gained from studying to be gained from studying a wide variety of seemingly non-essential subjects far outweigh any possible drawbacks. So we have used to be sure to start our sentence. And look at that. How different does it sound from just saying, yes, I agree that the benefits gained, and so on and so forth. You have used a different term. You have used something that is not the typical. You have used something that is a little fresher, a little easier on the eyes. And of course, it shows your own creativity and your own range as well. So let's look at another example of what you can do. Admittedly, it is not an easy task to determine what subjects contribute nothing, in quotation marks, as a strong case can be made for any one of them to remain on the curriculum. And again, we have veered off from the typical. We have not used the standard. What we have done is actually put something else in place that can be used to still create the same effect, but not in the same way. Keep in mind, students, your paper is being marked along with hundreds, even thousands of others by the same person. So you want yours to sound a little different from everybody else that marker has seen that day. So you want to ensure that you use different expressions that are accurate, of course, because accuracy is a key factor. You have to be accurate. You have to convey the right idea that you want, but you also want to make your paper seem somewhat different from the other hundreds, from the other thousands that are going to be marked by the same person. So let's continue now. True, students need to be exposed to a myriad of subject offerings to broaden their horizons and expose them to knowledge they would hitherto have avoided, given the option to do so. But should this be done at all grade levels? Think about it. What have you done in this particular sentence? How have you used true? What does true mean in this sentence? Think carefully. When you think of the truth, you're thinking of something positive, correct? So what you have done here is use true in place of saying, I agree, or I believe that, or I think that. One word has replaced those, and that one word has somehow even added another layer of meaning too, because by saying true, you're saying that this is a fact. Even though it might not be a fact, it's still an opinion, but you have presented it as if it is a fact. So keep that in mind as you go through the lesson today. You want to make sure your writing stands out. You want to make sure your writing is interesting. And you also want to make sure that you are conveying the message you actually set out to convey. So let's continue. Now we're moving into phrases that indicate a continuing line of reasoning. So you started developing an idea. These phrases now are going to help you to continue to develop that idea. These phrases are going to strengthen what you're saying. So look at the examples of the phrases that you can use. So you can use consequently, clearly, ellipsis, and then. So you'd use clearly first, some words come in between, followed by then. Moreover, besides, in the same way, following this further, pursuing this further, in light of, it is easy to see that. So remember, the ellipsis means you would put some words in between those two expressions. So now let's look at some sentences that utilize any of these expressions. So we all agree that students should not be restricted as they strive for holistic education. In pursuing this further, we must then fulfill our responsibility in providing the means through which this can be achieved, and do away with the notion of any subject being less than another. So how have you used in pursuing this further? Remember, the idea is that you are continuing an idea that you already started. So you would use this, in the paragraph after you have already introduced a point and you're now adding more to it, you're developing the point further. So using this, you're just basically saying that you want to ensure that you continue the idea you've already started. So you are continuing a line of reasoning. So look at what we did. We already started with, we all agree students should not be restricted. That is the line of reasoning. And then you use in pursuing this further to continue that line of reasoning, to further develop that line of reasoning. So you haven't added any new points. You're just expanding on the one you already started. So let's look at another example of how you can continue a line of reasoning. It has been shown that clearly some subjects are negligible to the lives of students. Then what recourse is there but to do away with them? So again, you started a line of reasoning. Some subjects are not necessary. And you have continued it now to say, since they're not necessary, then get rid of them. Remember, that's the question we're working with, the idea that there are some subjects that are considered to be less than relevant or not as important as others. So there are some subjects that there are those people who believe students should not be forced to do them. They should not even choose to do them. So right here, you have set up a situation where you have established that these are the subjects that I believe are unnecessary. And because of that, we're continuing the line of reasoning. Because of that, get rid of them completely. So that's another expression you can incorporate in your writing. So let's look at some more. In light of the fact that some subjects are viewed as inconsequential, it is clear to see that there needs to be a renewed approach to revising the content base of these subjects to make them relevant to the lives of, in quotation marks, Gen Z learners. Now remember, what are you doing? You are building on an idea that you started earlier. So you started the idea that in these modern times, we need to review and revise. And then you have continued to show why you need to review and revise by incorporating the local jargon and slang, Gen Z. That's your generation, actually. So your generation needs a different approach to the ones that had gone before, because the ones that had gone before, for better or for worse, you need to change things as we progress. There is no progress without change. You can't have something just continuing along. The same way your writing just can't continue along. Your writing must progress, it must develop, it must change, it must evolve. All right? So let's continue. So now we're going to look at phrases to indicate clarification of a point. What does it mean to clarify? Think about the meaning of clarify. The word clear comes to mind, right? So you're basically going to use these words to make a point more clear or to make the point clearer to whoever's reading. So these are some phrases you can do to help you with that. So let's see. Usually, you would say to explain, you would say in other words, you would say that is. And again, if these are the ones you use, you're not going to be penalized necessarily. However, you are going to rob yourself of the opportunity to earn higher grades by using more interesting terminology, such as these. So these are some phrases you can use. That is to say, to clarify, that one is quite obvious, to put it another way, or to paraphrase. So these expressions can be used to make what you're saying a little clearer. So you have started a point. It's not quite what you want it to be, but you can make it clearer. So let's see how you can employ them now. To paraphrase, the Education Committee's point raised regarding strategically positioning certain subjects at certain grade levels, we too can agree that there are certain subjects that can be of great benefit to students. They just need to be taught at an opportune time. So what you're doing there, you would have said already something about an education committee and something that is said regarding having these subjects stay online, or stay on board, I should say. Online is ruling the place right now. But what you want to do, after you have used their words, what you want to do now is put it in your own words. So you're paraphrasing. That's what you do when you paraphrase. You read something and then you put it into your own expression, into your own words, to simplify it or to add some meaning to it. All right? So make sure you remember that. Let's look at another example. Students are in dire need of exposure to varying experiences. That is to say, they need to be enrolled in courses outside of those aligned with their career aspirations as well. So what you have clarified is the idea that students, yes, we are going to streamline what they learn because everybody has a career in mind. However, what you're clarifying is that they also need to be open to other experiences, other enriching experiences. So we're not going to just steer you in one direction. So you're clarifying the point that students, yes, need specific training, specialized training, but we also need to ensure that they get holistic training. All right, let's look at another one. So phrases to indicate order or sequence. Now, these are what you would typically use. Finally, after, later, last, until, and since. So these are fine as they are. However, you want to remember, you want to make sure you make your writing a little more interesting. So look at these examples of what you could do instead. So these are some expressions you could use. So up to the present time. To begin with, in due time, presently. So look carefully, those are some ways, so some terms you can use to help to indicate order or sequence. Normally you would say numerical terms, first, second, lastly, next, after, and so on. But these are some that you can use instead. These are some that you can use to, again, add creativity to your writing, add interest to your writing. So let's continue. Without delay, henceforth, forthwith, straight away. Now, how many of you honestly use these expressions on a day-to-day basis? Be honest now. So right here is your opportunity to expand your range, as we have been encouraging you to do all this time. So you're going to expand your range and you're going to try and ensure that when you use these terms, they are used effectively, and of course they are used to ensure that your writing is going to be very interesting to whoever reads it. So let's look at some ways to go about doing it. So here's an example. There have been numerous reforms in the system of education, but up to the present time, revamping the curriculum to eliminate unnecessary subjects has not been among them. So what is the order that you have indicated? You have indicated that prior to this, there have been many reforms, but the sequence is that now there is no process that is in place to revamp the curriculum. All right? So we have been showing that here it starts off by showing what happened first, which was numerous reforms were being done. But it says up to the present time. So it's coming down to now. So at present, there still have not been any reforms for this one specific thing that we're focusing on. So right there, we have shown the order, the sequence. So let's look at another example. So the stakeholders should henceforth lobby for a cyclical approach to analyzing and updating the curriculum. What do you think henceforth means here? What is the meaning that that term is conveying in this sentence? The stakeholders should henceforth lobby for? Is it saying that they should have done it already? Or is it saying that they should do it as of now? Because that is what the word means. As of now, at this present time, as of this present time. So there you are using something different, something that will make your paper stand apart from the others. Look at this other example. This discussion of removing unnecessary subjects should lead to official policies being drafted forthwith. Again, another unusual word. We don't see this every day. We don't hear this every day. But wouldn't it be great if you could use it correctly in your writing? So again, what is the meaning that forthwith is conveying in this sentence? Same as henceforth, actually. Similar meaning. So as of this present moment. So the policies should be drafted as of now or right now. So this is another term that you can incorporate into your writing to make your writing stand apart, sound different, but still convey accuracy in meaning. Now we want to look at phrases that show cause and effect. Now think about it. You have a cause, which you're going to talk about, or you have talked about. Now you want to transition or link it to the effect. What are some typical ways that you would do this? What are some words you would normally use in order to show one thing happened, and as a result of that one thing happening, something else happens? You have a few ideas in mind? Sure you do. So, you have because, you have therefore, you have since, due to, and caused by. And you would have heard me say another one, as a result. So those are the ones that you most typically would use, the ones that you use most constantly in your writing, in your speech. But again, the whole aim is to broaden your range. Keep that in mind. You want to broaden your range. So you want to learn new terms that do the same things as these terms you have been using all along. So, several schools have discussed the issue of curriculum reform and have signed the petition accordingly. And we have highlighted the word accordingly. So how have you shown cause and effect? What is the cause that you have highlighted? What is the effect you have highlighted? So you look at the fact that schools have discussed the issue of curriculum reform. So that was the first thing that happened. And then after that, they signed the petition. And you use accordingly to show that these two things are linked. Because of this discussion, the result now is the signing of a petition. So you have linked those two things together. Now, you might ask, then how is it that the transitional word or phrase is at the end of the sentence? It can be at the end, it can be at the beginning, it can be within the sentence. What is important is the job it is doing in the sentence. Because even though accordingly comes at the end of the sentence, it still effectively links these two ideas. A discussion followed by a petition signing. So even though it didn't come in the middle or at the beginning, it still does the job of transitioning, of linking. Now let's look at the other one. Removing unnecessary subjects will, in effect, send a message of advancement to the rest of the world. So you have shown one thing, and then you have shown the resulting thing. So the first thing, removing unnecessary subjects. So once you do that, what will happen? It will send a message of advancement to the rest of the world. How have you connected those two ideas? You have used in effect to show the cause, removing the subjects, will of course lead to advancement of the rest of the world. Sorry. All right, so another example. Freedom of thought among students is made possible by allowing them freedom of choice in what subjects to study. So, what are the two ideas that you have linked using made possible? You didn't use as a result. You didn't use because. You didn't use any of those typical words. You didn't use any of those traditional words, but you have used a transitional word. Now, first idea, the idea of freedom of thought among students. And what is going to happen? If you allow them the freedom to choose subjects, then what will result is that their freedom of thought will be developed. So in this case, you actually put the cause after the effect. So the effect will be freedom of thought, and the cause will be freedom to choose. So you don't have to put the cause before the effect. You can actually put the effect and then go back to what caused it. So those are two different ways you can try it out. Again, remember, we're promoting creativity, we're promoting difference. So let's look at the other example now. The reports of improved student performance after eliminating unnecessary subjects skyrocketed, as might be expected. So what led to what? What caused what? What was an effect of what? So we have the reports of improved student performance. Is that the cause or is that the effect? Notice how the rest of the sentence is structured. After eliminating unnecessary subjects, this skyrocketed. So, are we getting the cause? Are we getting the effect? So, eliminating the unnecessary subjects in this writer's mind led to the actual skyrocketing of improved performance. So, performance improved, and it didn't just improve gradually, it improved greatly. And notice now what links those two ideas? As might be expected. So they're showing the actual link between the two. What this writer is saying that naturally, if you do one thing, then this other thing is going to be the natural outcome. So you expected this outcome. And therefore, these two things are linked, cause and effect. The high cost of living currently being experienced gives rise to the feasibility of abolishing subjects that do not contribute to life. Can you identify the cause? Can you identify the effect? You have gives rise to as your link word, your link phrase right there. So what caused what? What is the result of what? So let's look. We have the high cost of living currently being experienced. Currently being experienced. So that tells you something. Is that the cause or is that the effect? And then it says, gives rise to the feasibility of abolishing subjects that do not contribute to life. So the cause is really abolishing the subjects. It's feasible to abolish the subjects. And then the natural effect will be that the high cost of living currently being experienced more than likely will go down. Because notice I said the feasibility of abolishing. So that means if we don't abolish, then the high cost of living will continue. However, if we do abolish, then naturally it gives rise to the idea that the high cost of living will decrease. Whether this is true or not, we don't know. Remember, you are trying to prove a point. So you're going to use whatever information you have at your disposal to try and prove and enhance your point. So let's look at the last one. Eliminating certain unnecessary subjects was responsible for the rise in student attendance. So right there you have the order nicely laid out, plain and simple. So the cause, eliminating certain unnecessary subjects. And the effect, rise in student attendance. And what did you use to connect those two? Was responsible for. Very clear, very simple, very precise. Now let's look at phrases you can use to conclude or to summarize. Now at this point in your essay, you have made your strong points. You have made your introduction, gave us your thesis, gave us your supporting sentences, you developed each point that you had, use your supporting details. Now it's time to finish. Now remember, your concluding paragraph is just as important as the rest of your essay, because this is the paragraph that will leave that final note in your marker's mind, the last thing you say to the marker before you finish writing. So you want to make sure you finish strong. So you want to ensure that when you do your concluding paragraph, you don't end up undoing all the hard work you did in the paragraphs before. So you don't want a very flimsy conclusion. You don't want a very superficial conclusion either. You want your conclusion to pack a punch. You want it to leave a positive impression, because it can leave a negative impression too, and you don't want that. You want it to leave a positive impression on your reader. So when you conclude, you still have to use your transitional phrases. You still have to use your link words, because you might have to be linking what you're saying in the conclusion to the rest of the essay, or you might just be transitioning between sentence to sentence within your conclusion. So there are various persuasive techniques that you can employ, as well as using your transitional phrases and link words in that paragraph. So remember, it's the last paragraph. You don't want to waste all your hard work by making it your weakest link. So normally, when we're going to close, these are some of the expressions we would use. In conclusion, or to conclude. Very popular, very common. We see it all the time. In summary, or to summarize. Another popular one. And the alternative to that, to sum up. So these are the typical ways you can go about starting your conclusion or developing your conclusion. And again, nothing wrong with them. However, you want to bring your writing a step up. You want to make it a step apart. So you want to ensure that you try as much as possible to include other phrases in there that will make it sound different, but still convey the message you want. So think of this now. Obviously, retaining certain subjects on the curriculum is not only unnecessary, but also counterproductive to the main purpose of education. What have you concluded here? What have you summarized, if anything? You have said, obviously. So right there, you're bringing up the idea that it is something that is well known to everyone. It is something that a blind man could see and a deaf man can hear. Obviously, retaining certain subjects. So already you are setting up the idea that you are not approving of, you're not in agreement with this situation. So retaining certain subjects on the curriculum is not only unnecessary, but also counterproductive. And do you notice you have used another transitional phrase in there that we learned from before? You notice? Not only and but also. Right. So you don't have to only use one. You can use more than one transition as long as they are appropriately used. So we're focusing on obviously though, because this is the one that is bringing your argument to a close. So by using obviously, you're showing that this is my stance. You have basically been arguing all along the pros and the cons, and now you're wrapping it up, you're tying it up neatly. This is what I believe, and this is what I hope by now you believe as well. That is what you're saying when you use the word obviously, because what you're implying is that it is well known. Everybody knows this. So it shouldn't be a secret anymore. Let's look at the next one. The benefits of abolishing non-essential subjects pale in comparison to those of retaining them in the final analysis. So again, you're using a phrase that sums up what you have been arguing all along. And what have you been arguing all along? You have pointed out some benefits and you have pointed out some drawbacks. And what you're saying now, in summing up your argument, is that the benefits do not match up to the drawbacks. So what you're saying that after you have gone through, you have weighed the pros and you have weighed the cons, in the final analysis, it is not worth it. It is not worth it to keep them. So the benefits that you may get are not worth what it will cost you in the long run. So remember, you can use these terms again at the end, and you still are transitioning because you are transitioning into your closing arguments right here. It is without a doubt that unnecessary subjects must be abolished to facilitate the transformative change needed among students. Now look at that. You have used without a doubt. What is that similar in meaning to? It carries the same meaning, it carries the same idea as obviously, doesn't it? Because you're again saying the same thing here, that there is no question that this is what you need to do. Notice it says, it is without a doubt that unnecessary subjects must be abolished. So there is no question, as you are putting it, that you need to get rid of the unnecessary subjects you consider unnecessary, by the way, in order to facilitate the transformative change needed among students. So what you're saying really, we all know that in order to see the change we want, we need to trim down what we don't want. And however you put it, you have said without a doubt. So you're more or less bringing a forceful statement to show that this is what must happen because this is what we know should happen. The decision to retain certain unpopular subjects will always be a wise one in any event. A very simple statement, very straightforward statement. So let's look at how in any event is used. What meaning does in any event carry? What comes to your mind when you see the word event? An event, an activity, right? So if you say in any event, are you really trying to say under any circumstance? So whether in this situation or in that situation, the outcome will be the same. And your outcome, as you have put it, is that the decision to retain certain unpopular subjects will always be a wise one. So even though the subjects are considered unpopular, the decision to keep them will always be wise. So it doesn't matter what happens. So you have in your essay possibly shown the pros and the cons again. And now you're bringing it back that even though these subjects are considered unpopular, keeping them is much better than getting rid of them. After much deliberation, it is no wonder that eliminating unnecessary subjects has proven to be the only practical option. So, look at that one carefully. After much deliberation, it is no wonder that eliminating unnecessary subjects has proven to be a practical option. Now, after much deliberation, what does that statement mean to you? When you deliberate, what do you do? Think about it carefully. Deliberate on it, actually. So when you deliberate, you're thinking about something, or you have discussed it at length. Could mean either of the two things. So after much deliberation, after much thought, after much discussion, maybe possibly even some research, it is no wonder that eliminating the subjects has proven to be the only practical option. So you're concluding now that when you've gone through all the points that you have raised, and when your reader has thought about all the points that you have raised, questioned your points even, the only viable outcome should be do away with these subjects that we think are unnecessary. And our final one, it should be abundantly clear that retaining all subjects means retaining holistic education. Right there you have contradicted the one before. So these are two different ideas coming out, one in support and one in opposition. And when you say it should be abundantly clear, you're conveying the same meaning as it being obvious. And you're also saying that after you have discussed everything, after you have thought about everything, after you have analyzed everything, one thing should be clear. Keeping all these subjects will contribute to holistic development. And that is something that we all strive for. We want holistic development. We just don't want you to be good at one thing and poor in another thing. So all these subjects are going to add to your holistic development, even if they're not in line with your career path, even if you don't see the value of them. That is the point you're conveying with this situation here. All right. So, of course, it is time to put all you know into practice. See what you can remember from the lessons you have been taught. So, I want you to make the connection now. So, in each of the following sentences, identify the function of the transitional phrase or link word that is used. So, you're going to see some sentences, and all of the sentences are familiar, I can tell you that. And what you're going to do, based on the words highlighted, word or words highlighted, you're going to say what they're doing in the sentence. Ready? Let's go. The fact that we are all entitled to freedom goes without saying. What is the function of goes without saying? What is it doing in this sentence? The fact that we're all entitled to freedom goes without saying. Ready with your answer? I hope so, and I hope it's right. Here's the answer. So it's a phrase that is being used to support evidence. So you would have already said, we are all entitled to freedom. That is your evidence. And of course, based on the fact that you're bringing forward that idea, you're going to say it goes without saying. It is a natural conclusion. We are all entitled to freedom. We don't need to talk about it anymore. That is it. Let's look at another one. The complacent students of yesteryear who unquestioningly accepted school uniforms greatly differ from the outspoken, quote-unquote, woke students of today. What is differ from doing in this sentence? Differ from. That one shouldn't be that hard to figure out. Differ, different. So when something differs, it does this. So you have presented an opposing or a contrasting view. Notice you have compared two different types of students. Former students who accepted everything that was given to them in the form of school uniforms, and this current set of students who are more outspoken and more aware. So you have contrasted these two sets of students. All right, let's look at this one now. Students are in dire need of exposure to varying experiences. That is to say, they need to be enrolled in courses outside of those aligned with their career aspirations as well. What is that is to say doing in this sentence? What is it linking? What idea is transitioning through that statement? Students are in dire need of exposure to varying experiences. That is to say, they need to be enrolled in courses outside of those aligned with their career paths. You have the answer. I know you do. I know you do. And this is it. So you're using this phrase to indicate a clarifying point. You're clarifying a point. So you have made it a little clearer. So when you say that is to say, you're basically simplifying the statement you made already. So the first statement, students in dire need of exposure to varying experiences. And you have put it in a different way now. You have clarified it by saying they need to be enrolled in various courses. So you made one statement, and just in case somebody didn't quite understand what you meant, you have clarified it after. Let's look at the next one. The stakeholders should henceforth lobby for a cyclical approach to analyzing and updating the curriculum. Henceforth. Do you remember what we said you use henceforth to mean? Henceforth means what? Last week? Last year? Next year? 10 years down the line? What does henceforth mean? Do you remember? You should. Remember, henceforth means as of now. So if it means as of now, what is that transitional phrase doing? Stakeholders should, as of now, lobby for. What is it doing? You remember? Hope you do. So it is indicating an order or a sequence. So as of now, they're going to do this. They weren't doing it before, but from this moment on, going forward, they're going to do it. All right, look at this one. The youth are subjective to draconian rules and consequently rebel at every opportunity presented to them. Consequently. Consequently, related to consequences. What is the meaning being conveyed there? How is this word being used? What is the idea that it is trying to connect? So the youth are subject to draconian rules. And consequently, there's a popular term you would use. You would use as a result. They rebel at every opportunity. So if you would use as a result in place of consequently, what is going on? You remember? Yes, you do. So you're drawing a conclusion. So you have said, because this happens, then naturally that will happen. So that is all for today.